So today we're going to speak about depression, and not the clinical one, of course, but the one that a lot of people actually suffer through in this life, and especially in this modern world, when we have a lot of young people that feel suicidal and feel depressed, and like there's no meaning, and the doomer vibe, from the previous video. So it's kind of a functional depression, and it's highly functional actually, highly functional depression. It's kind of a existential crisis. It's a problem even with younger people, like 15 years old, 17 years old. And there's like this quick lifestyle. It's kind of the gray daily life. A lot of young people uh, in the public transport and looking at their phones. People sitting in the car, after work and feeling like pretty depressed. They feel like life is just another case of a problem. Okay, so today we're like pretty connected. Technologically, of course, we're in the net. Let's put it like this, right? So it should be easy to connect with each other. It shouldn't be a problem. It shouldn't be like a social uh, manner, But in a way, we can just witness that a lot of people go through some emotional problems. They can't find friends, they can't find partners, they can't even find jobs. Sometimes they have social anxiety, they have depression, low self-esteem, and of course loneliness. Okay, right? So when we speak about this, I can see three huge problems. So the first one is, of course, we're always going to start with this, with the early childhood, the early development in the family and in school, of course. And how with boys, they're told, to be, men don't cry, be strong, be independent. It actually teaches them emotional depression. It's kind of repression. And when they grow up, they don't know how to express it. They don't know how to express their feelings, their loneliness, their depression. And so they suffer. They suffer in a quiet depression, and they think that's a normal thing. I mean that's what they've been taught whole life. In family, in school, in the society. Actually, men should not cry. It's seen as weakness. That's a weakness, right? So this weakness actually leads to like really hard consequences, really serious consequences. One of them is, of course, depression in young people, and suicidal uh, ideation, and sadly sometimes even suicide. It's a big thing. Actually, it happens for over years. Sometimes months, but most of the times years. Just adds up, and it's the same. It's the same with girls. It's not just about the boys, right? So for girls, that from early age they often get accepted and loved only when they are good. They're nice, cute, beautiful, and they make no problems, right? So that gives birth to people pleasing, persona, or hyper perfectionism, and that's a big thing actually for women, and that it grows up with the time, and we can witness it, in the social medias, of course, but not just, it's not limited there. So they're told, to uh, suppress their needs and boundaries, so they will not disappoint others, right? So when they grow up, they feel fear to be imperfect, to make mistakes, to not be perfect, looking. So their loneliness comes from the fact that Even when they're surrounded by people, they have the mask, of the girl that always does good, and it's always the best, right? It's always smiling, of course. Okay, so no one really knows the true self of this girl, or the deep psychology of isolation and depression. And so again, we go kind of we just go step a little bit further, or step aside. Let's put it like this. And we can see for the boys and for the girls, that there's problem in schools, right? It's the fabric for the production. Let's put it like that, right? So modern, educational systems, it take these two models, and it makes them actually stronger, and amplifies them, to the end. It's a dead end anyways. So school doesn't teach us in emotional intelligence, or how to, you know, make connections, real connections. It makes us feel more comparing. It compares. We compare each other. Boys and girls compare each other. Boys with the boys, girls with the girls, very often. So boys, they compare each other with the domination and the status, which grows up later, of course. And girls uh, are comparing each other, with the grades and how they look, and of course the approval of others, right? So these two models, they grow up with the time, and they get even stronger. It strengthens them, it amplifies them. So school doesn't only value, just the results. It makes them feel more productive, for the economy, not connecting with each other, not have human relations, which is actually the basis of mental health. And when we left school, for example, we entered the life with like zero readiness, for emotional intelligence, and how to deal with the inner world, not just the outer, not just what's happening in the environment, but in each other, right? So this is the first problem that I think we need to emphasize, and actually, give some attention to it. It's the early years. They're the most vital ones. Okay. So the second problem that I think is social medias. It's the trap of the social medias. They don't just make us sad. They just distort the reality. Let's put it like that. So the syndrome of the perfect life. Young men. They see 20 years old millionaires with fast cars and a lot of girls around them, a lot of attention, a lot of views, and a lot of likes, right? And women, young girls, they see other girls with perfect bodies and filter of their life, and influencers. Everything is perfect, right? They're beautiful. Okay. They want to be like them. They feel bad if they are not like them, and they get depressed, right? Because they don't have this kind of a body, and men don't like them. They just feel bad. And remember when I said that thing with the school, the approval and the love of others and society for women. This is a painful remark, actually, that it hurts. It hurts the women, right? So the result here is is the brain is making constantly this social comparison, because the real life, it cannot be in that same category with the filters. And then is born, the person feels like a failure, like abandoned. And everything leads to isolation, and you're unwanted. Let's put it like that. You're not the one that people like. So people start fearing, and actually feeling shame, shameful about their, let's say, regular life, and they close each other. They close in their self. They don't want to share who they are. They don't want to even show who they are. They don't have the most expensive cars, the most expensive clothes, and even houses, the apartments. They don't have this life that everyone wants, right? So this normal life kind of feels like strange. It's weird. Actually, to a lot of people, it's weird. It's not nice, it's not cool, it's not beautiful, right? And then, the depression kind of swamps up around the life of these young people, and they start feeling like there's no meaning. There's no point in doing anything because they will always be regular, right? They will never have these influencer vibes and have, a lot of money and a lot of viewers, a lot of likes and a lot of comments, actually. That's a very big thing. It strengthens your social interactions. It actually makes you feel less endangered, because people are really much into the social interaction, social life. That's very important, actually, for humans. And if they are in deficit, that's a big problem. It's a huge issue, actually. You can witness this even in the childhood years, in the early age, when kids are not accepted or rejected and they feel endangered. It's a normal thing. You know, this is connected to how you're going to go through it. You need to be part of the group. You need to be accepted, approved, and loved, cared, appreciated, right? So when that happens, you're just a regular guy or girl using the social medias, let's say Facebook or TikTok or whatever, and you're nothing special. That's what you're thinking about yourself, because you don't have all of this, attention and all of the good things, right? So in your brain, you start feeling like you're comparing yourself, actually, and you teach yourself to compare yourself everywhere, even in the real life, right? So you meet new people and they're more successful than you, or they're better than you in some cases, in some scenarios. And you start feeling like you're comparing yourself to them, and you start feeling depressed. Like there's no point in you doing anything because you will never be like them. You'll never reach that. Let's put it like that, highness, right? Okay. So when we combine this with with the early childhood, how school fails, to prevent all of this and to teach emotional intelligence, we can see how it shapes actually the entire society. Society is actually in the whole world, because everywhere they use social medias, and everywhere they have schools. Of course, some systems are way better than others. Some countries are way more developed, and they put priority on some things like mental health, of course. But in general, that's what happens, and it's pretty easy actually to go in the trap of social medias and make you feel bad, depressed, and like a useless person, right? So yeah, I think that's the second problem. And the third problem, uh, it's the social pressure and the isolation, of course. So the society always tells you have to be independent and to not depend about anybody with anybody, and just to have that hustle culture, that hustle inside of you. That's very important. How they say, especially the older guys, girls, let's say women and men, how you need to be. You gotta hustle if you want to be good and rich and have everything. You gotta hustle hard. And not expect anything. So in this kind of it's an individual problem, and it destroys actually communities. Communities actually start withdrawing. They start kind of looking for themselves. You know, they gotta hustle hard because they hear that all the time and they see it everywhere. And young people actually don't want to be vulnerable. Because they don't want to be hurt. It's going to be hurtful. And that is the loneliness of the that is the trap of the loneliness. Because they just don't want to be vulnerable, but in order to meet someone, have even friends or relationships, partners, you got to be vulnerable. You got to allow yourself to be that. You got to be in that situation. You got to be in that particular case where you just feel like it. So young people, kind of mistake the safety of isolation with freedom, right? So because freedom is very important. It's vital actually for humans. And when there's no freedom, you feel like you're trapped. You're in prison. There's no escape, and there's no point in doing anything, right? And so this safety of in the isolation, of course you're in the comfort zone, you know, but you're alone. And at some point of when you're, let's say, 20 years old to 25 years old, you start feeling like loneliness is a big chunk of your life. It's a big problem. You can't even see yourself anymore like you used to be. You don't like your life. You just want to share your life with someone, but at the same time, you're afraid to be vulnerable. And let's go back, to the school days. No one allows you to be vulnerable, right? Because men should not cry, women should not show their true self. That's a bad thing, according to society and schools, a lot of them. And emotional intelligence in this particular case could be the savior, the savior of the day, let's say. Let's put it like that. But the vulnerable problem is actually that, they just wanna avoid that. They don't wanna be messing up with feelings, with emotions, and stuff like this. So when you don't know how to be vulnerable, you don't know how to be with other people. You know, you don't know how to treat them. You don't know how to accept love and give love at the same time. Just like with my previous video about doomers, it's very vital to receive love and to give love, to accept it. But since you don't know how to do it, you're just focused on the hustle heart, right? Hustle culture, and you gotta be independent. Leave others. You don't need people. You just need money and cars and apartments and stuff like this. You gotta be successful, right? That's success in social media, especially expressed, and it's displayed in a very dramatic way. Actually, it's tragic for young people. I think that's the tragic of our time. A lot of young people just don't know how to accept others and how to accept love when it's needed and how to give love when it's needed. And there are a lot of people that feel lonely and they fall in depression, and they feel like there's no escape. That's going to be always, and there will be never ever be, let's say, let's put it like this, like normal, like in their eyes. But they look through the eyes, through the lens of depression and negativity and loneliness. It's pretty easily actually to notice that all of these things, are kind of a illusion, including the social media that actually brainwashes. It brainwashes the people, and especially the young people. And it's pretty dangerous actually for mental health, from psychological view, of course, and not just. And I'm pretty sure that a lot of parents actually know this and know this. Just like the school systems and the school problems, they're family problems. So a lot of parents, make mistakes, but some of them don't even notice all of the issues. They just go through this. But of course, some parents are also brainwashed, and it's not their fault in a way. Of course, it's the same as the propaganda. It just works. In a very silent way, in silent manner. It's quiet. It's quiet. Uh, win. In this battle. So yeah, I think these are the three problems that we need to fix. If we want young people to not be depressed and to do something about it, of course. And that's not to say, that this is the holy grail and stuff like this. But actually, the truth is that that's my opinion. That's what I think, and that's what I have noticed. And I think it works like that. And the mechanism of it is exactly that. So in order for us to secure our future with the young people and with the kids, even, is by changing, the system of the schools, which actually essentially is it's possible. Because if you're working in school and if you're an expert that works with kids and school systems, you are the system, right? So you can do something about it. Each of us can do. And another thing that we can do is educate children in emotional intelligence and how to deal with social media and cyberbullying and bullying in general. because these are like really huge problems. Each day, every day, there's bullying in each school. No matter what people say, there is no school that has doesn't have it. It's not always the physical bullying, of course. There's mental one, emotional and cyberbullying. This is a big problem. So we can educate kids in emotional intelligence, how to deal with their emotions and how to take life and how to take social medias, and that it's okay to cry sometimes. You know, no matter if you're male or female, it's okay to cry. It's needed actually. It's one of the most basic, needs when you feel stressed or when you feel bad. And it's okay. It doesn't make you weak. It actually makes you strong. You know, because you know how to express it, how to vent it out. It's a vital thing. It's actually part of also the social skills that we need to develop in kids. And allow for women, of course, not to be perfect. That's totally okay. And they don't need to have perfect bodies and in general be perfect. They don't have to wear masks, so society will accept them and love them and be with them. These are very, very tightened things, and it has correlation with it. So everything starts, from the early childhood, right? In the family, and it's cool. So the family system, it's one way, and it shifts it, it shapes it. It's a very vital thing, actually. It's needed. So there we can have the displayed love of the parents. There we can have the social skills building, with socializing, and we can have the emotional intelligence, of course, and teach our kids how to deal with emotions and other people actually in the world. And then when, the school system can take that and shift it even more, even further, even better, and not repress it or suppress it in any particular order. Because one of the biggest problems, in suicidal ideation, and of course suicide sometimes, of course I'm excluding again the clinical ones. It's not a clinical depression. It's not clinical suicidal thinking and you know the cases. A lot of the kids actually commit suicide when they don't know how to deal with their emotions. They break up with their loved ones, or they lose a family member, uh, or just something like really stressful and strong, happens in their life. Something really bad, and they don't know how to deal with it. They haven't been taught, not in family, not in school. So this is very vital. We could protect our kids, you know. And I'm not saying that all of them, are in this case. There are clinical cases, like I said, but there are a lot of suicides done not by clinical patients, right? Just like very, very sad people in the very wrong moment, that they don't know how to deal with it. They think that it's going to be forever and there's no escape, right? So the suicide is escape. And we have to teach our kids that the escape is a different thing. It's a different element. It's not the end of life. It's not the end of suffering like that. We can end the suffering in another way, right? But no one teaches them that. Nowhere. Because either they're scared, they might, prone them to depression and suicide thinking, or they just don't know how to do it, right? They just don't know how to teach them. That's a very scary thing actually for any parent and for any system. To lose a kid and by suicide, and it's in the depressive state, right? So we have to secure all of these things, and we have to do our best. You know, all of us are responsible. Even people who don't have kids, we always can do anything about them. It's part of the big picture, but I think these are the main concepts, and I think that it's very important. I really think we have to speak more about it, more openly, more broadly. It's a broad topic, and there are a lot of people that can contribute to it. I'm not saying my opinion is the most important one. At least it can start a conversation about it, and do our best to protect our kids and secure their future. I think it's very vital. And these are the main concepts that I wanted to speak about in this video. And yeah, I think that's it for now. Uh, if you got any problems or any questions, I'm always open. Uh, and I will try my best to get into your situation and try to help you. Uh, so yeah, I think that's it.